When the rescue shuttle first detected the drifting pod near Jupiter's orbit, the crew expected wreckage. That's usually what you find out here in the deep black. Instead, they found something no larger than a delivery crate, patched with a strange silver resin and glowing with a faint, pulsing blue light. Inside, huddled together for warmth, were 3 small alien cubs. They were fluffy, unbelievably fluffy, covered in soft violet fur with silver specks that shimmered like a captured nebula. Their eyes were enormous, liquid black pools with stunning rings of gold around the edges. They made soft, worried chirping sounds, their tiny claws gripping one another in a silent plea for comfort. Right there, in that cold, patched-up box, humanity officially made first contact, and our first contact was hungry. The cubs were carefully transported to Lunar Station Horizon, which immediately became the most fascinating place in the solar system. The station was abuzz. Scientists, linguists, and xenobiologists surrounded the cubs with gentle fascination, running scans and taking notes. It was clear from the start that these little creatures were intelligent. They mimicked sounds with surprising speed and could project simple holographic symbols from organic bands on their wrists. But for all our combined knowledge, for all our advanced technology, we couldn't figure out the most basic thing. What did they eat? We tried everything. At first, the humans offered nutrient gels, the standard fare for space travel. The cubs sniffed them and let out a synchronized, almost comical sneeze of disgust. Next up were protein cubes. One cub bravely poked a cube with its tiny nose before deciding it was better used as a toy and trying to bury it under a blanket. We brought them hydroponic fruits grown right there on the station. They just rolled them around like colorful balls. For 2 long, tense days, the cubs only chirped weakly. Their golden-ringed eyes began to dim, and a palpable anxiety settled over the entire station. This was supposed to be a momentous occasion, a breakthrough for all mankind. But we were failing these lost children. How could feeding them be this difficult? Then, salvation arrived from the most unexpected place imaginable. A maintenance engineer named Arjun Patel was watching the news feed during his dinner break. He was from Lahore, stationed on Horizon for 6 years, a long way from home. In his hand was a sealed container of homemade butter chicken that his mother had insisted he bring with him before launch. As he ate, the broadcast showed one of the cubs staring intently at a rotating hologram of Earth's cuisines. The little creature tilted its head, its focus fixed on an image of something orange and creamy. Arjun blinked. He looked down at his own dinner, then back at the screen. He muttered to himself, "No way," without a second thought. He grabbed his container and marched straight to the observation deck. Security almost stopped him. Bringing unauthorized food into a sterile xenobiology lab was against every rule in the book. But the lead scientist, Dr. Ilara Vance, was desperate. She waved him through. "This is highly irregular, Patel," she warned, her voice tight with stress. Arjun just replied calmly, "They haven't eaten in 2 days. Let's just try something with a little flavor." He opened the container. Instantly, the sterile air of the laboratory was transformed. A rich, warm aroma filled the space, the scent of tomato, cream, butter, garlic, and a symphony of spices, cumin, coriander, turmeric, garam masala. The smell curled through the lab like a living, welcoming thing. Across the room, all 3 cubs froze. Slowly, 3 tiny noses lifted into the air, twitching. 3 pairs of wide, golden-ringed eyes locked onto the source of the smell. One of them let out a questioning little chirp. Tentatively, they toddled forward on their small, padded paws. Arjun crouched down carefully and placed a small spoonful of the sauce on a sterile plate. The bravest of the 3 cubs inched forward. It sniffed the plate, its whiskers trembling with anticipation. Then it took a tiny taste. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The cub's violet fur fluffed outward like an exploding dandelion. Its eyes glowed brighter than they ever had before. It let out a high, delighted trill that echoed through the silent lab, a pure sound of joy. The other 2 cubs, seeing this, practically tackled the first one to get to the plate. Within seconds, the butter chicken was gone. They licked the plate clean and then looked up at Arjun with an expression of such pure, unadulterated adoration that half the scientists in the room felt their hearts melt on the spot. Dr. Vance just stared, completely dumbfounded. She whispered, "You're telling me humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement is butter chicken?" Arjun just shrugged, a modest smile on his face. "It's comfort food." Over the next week, a carefully modified version of butter chicken became the Cub's primary source of nutrition. The station's scientists analyzed its components and discovered something astonishing. The Cub's unique biochemistry actually metabolized the spice compounds like capsaicin as energy catalysts. The complex layering of spices actively stimulated their neural growth. The creamy tomato base provided amino structures that were perfectly compatible with their biology. In short, butter chicken wasn't just tasty to them, it was the perfect food. The Cubs grew stronger with every meal. Their weak chirps evolved into melodic patterns that linguists quickly identified as the beginnings of a complex language. The holograms they projected from their wristbands became more intricate star charts, planetary maps, and what appeared to be their home system. We learned they belonged to a species that called themselves the Valori, and we learned something else. Among the Valori, sharing your favorite food was the highest, most sacred form of trust. One evening, as Arjun delivered another carefully prepared batch now officially approved by the newly formed Interstellar Culinary Board, the smallest cub toddled forward. It was carrying something small and glowing in its tiny paws. It carefully placed the object at Arjun's feet. The object projected a hologram that expanded to fill the room. Gasps filled the observation deck. The projection showed detailed star charts maps of safe warp corridors through previously uncharted, unstable regions of space. It highlighted mineral-rich systems and energy phenomena beyond human understanding. "It was a gift of unimaginable value," Dr. Vance whispered, her voice filled with awe. "They're sharing their navigation archives." For decades, humanity had struggled to map safe faster-than-light routes beyond our own solar system. In one single act of generosity, the Valori had just solved centuries of exploration challenges for us, all because of a home-cooked meal. Months later, a massive Valori vessel emerged from warp space beyond Neptune. It was breathtaking, shimmering like woven starlight, its form both organic and impossibly elegant. The adult Valori were tall, graceful beings with flowing silver fur and the same radiant, intelligent eyes as their young. They communicated through harmonic tones that vibrated gently in your chest, a language of pure feeling and intent. When they learned how their lost cubs had been cared for, the station prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in history. Ambassadors rehearsed their speeches. Politicians prepared their trade proposals. Arjun just cooked. The main docking bay was transformed into a welcoming hall. At its center stood a long table, but it held no weapons or contracts. It was laden with warm, steaming bowls of butter chicken, carefully adjusted to be palatable for both species. The Valori elders approached the table. They leaned in and inhaled the warm, spicy air. A ripple of color, like the northern lights, passed through their silver fur. One elder stepped forward, took a small taste, and a profound silence fell over the hall. Then, the elder produced a deep, harmonic note that resonated through every human present. The universal translators struggled for a moment before finally outputting a simple, beautiful phrase. Shared warmth. Shared stars. We learned that day that the Valori did not value displays of power or dominance. They valued care. They valued nurturing. By looking after their young, humanity had earned something far greater than a treaty. We had earned their friendship. In the years that followed, human ships began traveling the Valori-guided star lanes. Joint colonies were formed in distant, beautiful systems. Our two cultures exchanged art, science, and stories. And across two civilizations spanning light years of space, one dish became a legend. On Earth, restaurants advertised authentic Valori-approved butter chicken. On Valori worlds, small, fluffy cubs would beg their caretakers for the delicious, orange-gold delicacy from a distant star called Earth. Arjun Patel eventually returned home to Lahore. He opened a small, unassuming restaurant with a simple sign that read, "Galactic butter chicken, first contact recipe." Near the counter, he hung a framed holophoto. It showed three tiny violet cubs covered in sauce, their golden eyes glowing with pure happiness. Whenever customers would ask him if the incredible story was true, Arjun would just smile and say, "Humanity didn't win the stars with lasers. We won them with kindness." And a good recipe. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from across the universe. See you next time. The first official Human Valerie Cultural Summit was not held in a grand chamber. It was held in a kitchen. Specifically, Kitchen Module 7 on Lunar Station Horizon, now upgraded, expanded, and unofficially renamed the Hearth of Stars. 3 years had passed since the cubs were rescued. They were no longer tiny bundles of fluff wobbling on padded paws. Now they stood nearly waist-high to humans, their violet fur sleeker, their golden-ringed eyes sharper and wiser. But they still adored butter chicken. And today they were bringing something new. Arjun Patel adjusted his apron as the station buzzed with anticipation. Across the polished steel counters sat bowls of ingredients, fresh tomatoes, cream cultures, crushed garlic, ginger paste, carefully measured spices. Behind him stood Dr. Ilara Vance and a delegation of human diplomats. Opposite them, the three once-lost cubs, now recognized as junior envoys of the Valori Stellar Assembly, waited with excited trills vibrating in their chests. The smallest of the trio, now named Rivala in human phonetics, stepped forward carrying a crystalline container glowing faintly from within. She placed it gently on the counter. Arjun raised an eyebrow. "Your turn to cook?" Rivala's whiskers flicked in what humans had learned meant amusement. The container opened. Inside shimmered a fine powder that sparkled like crushed starlight deep indigo with flecks of silver energy drifting through it. Dr. Vance leaned closer. "Is it stable?" Rivala projected a holographic symbol. "Safe, nourishing, shared." Arjun grinned. "All right then. Let's make history again." The Valerie ingredient was called Sethary bloom dust, harvested from flowering organisms that grew in nebula-lit forests on their homeworld. It contained trace photonic compounds that interacted with Valori neural pathways, enhancing memory and emotional resonance. To humans, it was harmless. To Valori, it was sacred. And they were offering it freely. Arjun prepared the butter chicken, as he always did, marinating protein cubes in yogurt and spice blends, slow cooking the tomato base until it turned rich and fragrant, adding butter and cream until the sauce glowed orange gold. When the dish reached its final simmer, he looked at Rivala. "Ready?" She nodded. With delicate precision, she sprinkled Sethary bloom dust into the pot. The reaction was immediate but gentle. The sauce shimmered, not violently, not dangerously. It shimmered like sunlight dancing across calm water. A faint harmonic hum filled the kitchen, low and soothing. Every Valori present let out a soft, unified note of contentment. Arjun blinked. "That's new." Dr. Vance's instruments flickered. "Energy output minimal. Molecular structure stable. This is extraordinary." They served the dish carefully, humans on one side of the long table, Valori on the other. The first bite was taken simultaneously. For Arjun, it tasted like home but brighter, warmer, as if the flavors carried echoes of distant stars. For the Valori, it was overwhelming in the best way. Their fur rippled with flowing colors, violet shifting to silver, silver to luminous gold. Harmonic tones rose together in layered chords that resonated against the station walls. Translators struggled, but finally rendered the shared sentiment. Memory and warmth entwined. The spice accord had begun. Within months, joint culinary research centers formed across human and Valori space. Human chefs traveled to Nebula Forest to study Sethary blooms. Valori food artisans visited Earth markets, fascinated by sizzling street food, fresh naan bread, and the chaotic joy of open-air cooking. Butter chicken evolved. There was solar butter chicken, slow-cooked under filtered starlight. There was nebula roast fusion infused with Sethary bloom and earth-grown coriander. There were even vegetarian adaptations that Valerie elders claimed tasted like peace after storm, but something else changed too. The Sethary-infused butter chicken had unexpected effects. Joint human-Valora research revealed that when eaten together, literally together at the same table, the DISH triggered mild empathic resonance in Valerie participants and heightened emotional awareness in humans. It didn't read thoughts. It aligned feelings. Misunderstandings during diplomatic talks decreased by 63%. Trade negotiations concluded in half the usual time. Conflict simulations dropped dramatically in probability models. Human analysts jokingly called it weaponized comfort. Valerie scholars preferred another term, the flavor of understanding. One evening, Arjun received a private invitation aboard the Valerie archive vessel, the same shimmering ship that had first arrived years ago. He walked through corridors grown from living crystal, glowing softly with internal light. Harmonic whispers flowed through the structure itself. In the central chamber, the three former cubs waited. They were nearly adults now. "You saved us," Rivala said through the translator, her voice steadier than before. "But more than survival, you offered belonging." Arjun shook his head gently. "I just cooked dinner." Rivala tilted her head. "Among our kind, feeding a cub binds souls you did not know. Yet you acted." Behind her, a massive crystalline archive activated. A projection filled the chamber. The moment years ago when three tiny cubs tasted butter chicken for the first time, sauce smeared across their fur, eyes glowing brighter than stars. The recording had been preserved as a foundational historical event in Valerie culture. Arjun's throat tightened. "You kept that?" Rivala's fur shimmered warmly. "It is the moment we learned humans are hearth-bearers. But peace in the galaxy is never simple." Long-range probes detected signals from beyond mapped space, an aggressive expansionist species known as the Threx Dominion. Early contact reports described them as rigid, hierarchical, and deeply suspicious of emotional displays. Human and Valerie leaders convened urgently. Military projections were grim. Direct confrontation would be costly. Rivala spoke quietly during the council session. "Have they eaten with us?" The chamber fell silent. Arjun, now officially appointed cultural liaison of the Spice Accord, felt a familiar spark of reckless hope. "You want to invite a potential hostile empire to dinner?" Rivala's golden-ringed eyes glowed gently. Yes, the invitation was sent. To everyone's shock, the Threx Dominion responded. A single warship arrived at the edge of neutral space. Its hull was dark, angular, intimidating. Instead of weapons primed, it received coordinates to a neutral station prepared carefully. At the center of that station waited one long table. On it, butter chicken infused with Sethary bloom dust. Arjun adjusted his apron one more time. Dr. Vance whispered, "If this works again, I'm nominating you for Galactic Ambassador." He chuckled nervously. "Let's just hope they like spice." The Threx delegation entered tall, scaled beings with sharp features and eyes like polished stone. They stared at the dish suspiciously. Rivala stepped forward. "In our cultures," she said through translation harmonics, "sharing nourishment is sharing peace." A tense pause. Then the Threx commander reached forward, tasted, silence. A flicker passed through their rigid posture. Their shoulders lowered by a fraction. Stone-like eyes softened, just slightly. They took another bite, and in that quiet moment, humanity's oldest truth echoed across the stars once more. Sometimes strength is not shown through force, but through warmth offered freely. And somewhere deep in space, the scent of butter, cream, and distant nebula blooms drifted into a new chapter of history.